often don't talk about how the various systems of privilege and oppression shape who has the right to claim the social and legal status of mother. But what happens when a woman doesn't want to keep her child? Or the woman who doesn't want to birth a child, instead, she would like to nurture and love a child as her own? Should we stigmatize either of these women because of the choices they make? We need to start looking at adoption in new ways by letting the mothers among us speak about their experiences, past and present, because their voices have been missing from our conversations.
So for the purposes of this video, maybe I can introduce myself as Barbara, which is one of my names. I don't use it, so I guess, I'm a firstborn in a family of 3. I have a brother who follows me, and then a sister after that. Just a typical middle-class family. Grew up in Nairobi, went to school in Nairobi, primary school, went to a Nairobi boarding school, just the usual. So first of all, I actually had my first baby when I was 22. So it's the usual, I meet this person and I decided from when I was 18, I decided that I wanted to have a baby. And so at about 21, I meet this man, and I was in university. My parents did not think I should get married. So me and him decide the one thing that will make them agree for me to get married is if we got pregnant. So we plan and we get pregnant, and my parents still say, no, you cannot marry him. He was much older than me. And so then he was also from a different tribe, which was a big deal for my folks. So they say, no, you cannot get married. And so they refuse for us to get married. So I have that baby. And eventually he and I still did not last. So we break up. And so now I'm a single mom and life goes on. So a couple of years later, I meet somebody else and we have a relationship, and then we break up. But what I didn't know at the point that we broke up was that I had gotten pregnant. So when I discovered that I am pregnant, one of the things that I had told myself in my life was that I'd never have a man ask me, how do I know it's mine? So I decided not to tell him that I was pregnant because we had already broken up. So my first instinct was to have an abortion. But here I was pregnant, I was jobless, and I was living at home with my parents. And I already had child number 1. So because I wasn't working, I didn't have the money to have an abortion. And so one of the things I decided to do was to induce an abortion on my own. And so, when you're in campus and you're shown all these videos of all these things that women do to have abortions, and one of them was something about a saline solution. So this day I mixed this salt and water solution, and I tried to inject it into my uterus through my stomach. And it didn't work. In fact, all I got was just an abscess in the muscular tissue in my stomach. And so when that didn't work, I had to get a bit more creative. So I went to the pharmacy and I got some more syringes with needles, I think like 2. And I gave them some cock and bull story about how I worked for a nursing home, and so there is a hormone called oxytocin that induces labor. It's actually what is used to induce labor when a woman has maybe like broken her water and contractions have not yet started. So I got 6 vials of oxytocin, and I went home and I injected it into my body to trigger labor and hence an abortion. And it didn't work. Like, I just got a twinge. And so I basically gave up on getting rid of this baby that way. And so I had to now come to terms with the fact that I needed to resolve this a different way. So I thought maybe I could give up this baby for adoption. And this was 2002. So we barely had cell phones and we didn't have a phone at home. So I remember I went to the nearest phone booth and I went through the phone directory and I looked up the one place that I thought might be able to help me, which was Child Welfare Society. So I looked up their number and I called them and I asked them where they were. And they happened to be down the road from where I was staying. So the following day or a few days later, I went to them and I asked them, can they facilitate me giving up my baby for adoption because I was pregnant and I had wanted to have an abortion and it wasn't possible because I couldn't raise the money to have an abortion, and what was the procedure. And so they said yes, it was possible, and they walked me through the process. And so that's how I started on that journey. So once I got in touch with Child Welfare Society and I went to see them, then I was attached to a social worker. And so she counseled me. She made sure, just by talking to me, that this is what I really wanted. We had a number of counseling sessions. She walked me through what the process would entail. She walked me through especially the, can you say, psychosocial aspects of it, of giving up your child for adoption. And then she walked me through the legal aspects and what the legal process was. And I was ready. Well, one, there was relief. There was relief because I had a solution. Remember, I had tried to get rid of this baby and I hadn't been able to. So there was relief that there was a solution. There was a bit of apprehension because this was something I'd not done before. There was the general hormonal and the rest of that stuff that goes with being pregnant generally. So it was a mix of, I guess, a whole lot of stuff. And it was just everything, I guess, happening at once. I didn't talk to my parents because they didn't bring up the father I was expecting and I didn't bring it up. And so life just continued. My friends were very supportive, at least the ones who I was in contact with and who knew what was going on. And it was just that. I'm not sure how the system works now, but there were 2 ways you could do this. The first one was you could go to a hospital of your choice, have the baby, go home with the baby, and wait until there was space in a government-run children's home, then take the baby to the government-run children's home. Because what happens is that there is a 6-week window between the time the child is born and the time the parents get the baby for the birth mother to make the final decision. Part of the reason why they do that is because pregnancy hormones can make you make interesting decisions, and so they give the birth mother time to make the final decision, because when you make that decision, it's a final legal decision. Once you sign those papers, you cannot then change your mind. The other option is to go and have the child in a government hospital, then leave the child in the nursery there, because then the government takes over the process, wait out the 6 weeks, and then sign the legal papers, and then the child can go to the waiting parents. So I chose the second option because I didn't want to go home with a child. Remember, for starters, I was living with my parents, and then secondly, I already had baby number 1, and I didn't want the complications of starting to explain to my daughter, you have a sister, no, you don't have a sister, and so on and so forth. So the process that I went through was when I went into labor, because my water broke, I went into labor. I called a friend of mine, and he came home, and he picked me up, and he took me to Pumwani, which is where I wanted to have the baby, because it's a public hospital. And I went through labor, I gave birth. I actually spent about 8 hours with my daughter. I sang to her, I prayed over her, I talked to her, and then I called the nurses, and I had the legal paperwork for her, and I gave the paperwork, and I gave her to the nurses, and I told them, yeah, this baby is for adoption, she needs to go to the nursery. And then I left the hospital and left her there. So what the process is supposed to be is that in those 6 weeks, normally newborns are normally in high demand because they are clean slates. And so there's normally adoptive parents or an adoptive parent waiting. But for the 6 weeks, for the first 6 weeks of the baby's life, the baby is going to be cared for in either, in that case, the baby will be cared for in a hospital nursery or in a children's home nursery until the birth mother signs over the rights of the child to the adoptive parents. Yeah, so once I left the hospital, I went home, and 6 weeks later, I got in touch with Child Welfare Society. I went to their lawyer, and I signed over the rights to my daughter, and that was it. I have never had any regrets. In my mind, I've always said that I turned an unwanted child into a wanted child because I didn't want her, and her parents wanted her. Yeah, my sister has always said, that girl will come looking for you. I've always thought about it, and I guess we shall see how life plays out. Yeah, because she's going to be 19 in October. The biggest reason why I'm actually doing this interview anonymously is because I have no problem with what I did. I have no regrets, I have no issues, because I know I made the right decision for myself, for my daughter, and for my other daughter. But I don't want to deal with the ignorant part of society, or people who will walk up to me and say, how could you give up your baby? You're a bad mother, and the rest of that rubbish and nonsense. And that part of society actually is so prevalent that even the counselor at Child Welfare Society gave me this advice when I was going to have the baby. She told me, here are the legal documents for the baby and for you to be able to leave the baby at Pumwani. But do not tell the nurses that this baby is up for adoption until after the birth process. Because if they know that you're going to give this baby up for adoption, they're going to mistreat you during the birth process. That is a level of ignorance that we are dealing with. The level of ignorance that says that as a woman, if you are going to give up your baby for adoption, people are going to judge you very harshly, because as a woman, if you're going to give birth to a baby, you must take care of them. And I also feel like there are a lot of women who have children they do not want to take care of, but because of societal perception, they end up serving time, quote unquote, in taking care of those children, although they don't want to. And so I know that there are women who are going to watch this and listen to this and feel like I got a get out of jail card by what I did. And that's actually the only reason I'm doing this anonymously. I think that there's a lot of societal perception that if you get pregnant and you choose to have the child, you must then go through all it entails to take care of and bring up this child, whether you like it or not. And so anybody who is seen not to quite follow that script or to go down that road is seen as somebody who, what's the word I can use? Somebody who escaped or somebody who had it easy. And yet, it's a decision that I made. And I made the best decision for myself. And for my daughter, the one I brought up. And for my daughter, the one who was brought up by somebody else. Yeah, and it's just that simple. So I think any woman who adopts a child, for whatever reason they adopt, I think that's really beautiful, because there's so many ways to be a mother, and adoption is just one of them. And I think that motherhood is this amazing thing, especially if you do it by choice, like you would if you actually went out there and went through the process of adopting a child. And so I'd say more power to you, and as an adoptive mother. For a woman who gives up a child for adoption, I think that's also really, really beautiful, because you have your reasons. There are so many reasons why you'd be giving up your baby for adoption. And all those reasons are valid, because nobody knows the journey that you're walking. I'd say only be a mother if you want to be a mother. Don't be a mother because of society. Don't be a mother because you got pregnant. Be a mother because you want to be a mother. I am a mother to my first daughter because I wanted to be a mother. Like, I planned to get pregnant, And even if you don't plan to get pregnant and you find yourself pregnant, then work your way towards accepting to be a mother. But I always say that I had one maternal bone in my body that I have spent on my daughter, and I wanted to be a mother to her. But be a mother because you want to be a mother. Don't be a mother because of external things out there. Yeah.